Hello, everyone. Maybe we can just wait for a bit for everyone to join and then start in a while. We have people attending in. We'll just take 1 or 2 more minutes. Hello, good evening, everyone. I think there is some glitch with my video. I'll just check it and get back to you. Give me just 1 minute. I hope I'm visible and audible now. Okay, so we can start with today's session. A very good evening to everyone who has joined in, and I'll try my best to keep the session uninterrupted with my coughing or sneezing. And in case that happens, please pardon me because I've caught a bit of cold. So we can just start, and I'll introduce you with the session of today's. At ICA, we have initiated a learning platform called Shilp Samvad for craftspersons, practitioners, researchers, enterprises, organizations in these challenging times for the sector. The
Fine.
webinar today is hello. The webinar today is the second amongst our thematic offerings that will seek to share experience from a more hands-on view and talk about various attributes that contribute to a sustainable ecosystem in the textile-based crafts, socially, environmentally, and economically. More importantly, we'll take a closer look at those approaches that can play a critical role while examining the various practices and setting standards for the sector as green, and thus postulate a framework for sustainable criteria in the craft sector in a way applicable to the diversity and specificity of the textile practices in an Indian context. Keeping this context in mind, I am delighted to introduce today's special curation that we are calling as Unpacking the Many Layers of Sustainability in the Textile Craft Practices. Broadly, we understand sustainability as self-sufficiency and concept of a life in tune with the natural world. But what are these various challenges of application of sustainable principles and environment-friendly production methods across textile practices, given the sheer diversity, differences in scale, seasonal production cycles, and the unorganized or particularly organized nature of the craft practice? ICA has been working on issues of environmental and economic sustainability in the craft sector for past many years. The Craftmark certification, which has enabled economic and social sustainability in the craft businesses for its members, is now adding a third handle on its environmental sustainability, which is related to energy use, water use, use of hazardous chemicals, raw materials, packaging, etc. The Craftmark Green program will establish a robust certification system through research and direct interventions called Craftmark Green, which will cater to producers, buyers, consumers, and the craft industry as a whole in the long run. Our distinguished speakers today will bear upon the relevance of these efforts from their first-hand experience on ground and their own set of best or desirable practices in the course of textile productions. As we move ahead, I'll keep introducing our speakers one by one and would also request our attendees and audiences to please write in any questions in the chat box and we'll try to address them by end of the session. As we move ahead, I'll go on with introducing our first speaker. Although we have crossed paths many times earlier, I'm delighted to welcome Ms. Vasanti Veluri, co-founder of Pioli, and I'll just go on telling a bit about her. Vasanti is an Ananta Aspen Fellow and a textile graduate from National Institute of Design, is the co-founder of Pioli, a brand which is built on ethos of sustainable living through sourcing organic raw materials, honoring indigenous skills, and creating livelihood for women in Kumaon region of the Himalayas in Uttarakhand. Through Pioli, the aim has been to revisit the vernacular craft of hand knitting and almora using hand-spun indigenous wool and locally sourced dye stuffs to design handcrafted garments, built with a vision to demonstrate an alternate model of slow fashion by bringing together design, craft skills, and mindful production practices. Pioli produces handcrafted knitwear showcased all across the world. Pioli has many feathers to its hat and has been awarded with World Craft Council Award for Excellence in Handicrafts, the Lexus Design Award for Textile Design, the Sambhava Award for Women's Empowerment, and more recently, India's Best Design. Pioli has also been certified as the Craftmark member by ICA. And now I would just request Vasanti to come in and share her experience with us. Over to you, Vasanti.
Thanks, Shrishti. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go on.
Thanks, Shrishti, for the wonderful but exaggerated words. But more importantly, thank you to ICA for creating many such platforms to enable conversations on such critical topics, and to generally promote sharing amongst each other to learn more about such topics. As far as today goes, with my presentation, I would say that I'm sort of going to take you through our journey in a brief manner, where I would say we are just at the beginning of exploring this entire field of conscious design, I would call it. So I think we can start. So we are basically based out of a small town called Almora. And next slide. So just to give you a context, Almora is located in the Kumaon Hills of Uttarakhand. So we are located at the foothills of the Himalayas. And I think all of us are familiar with the mountainous region to be rich and bountiful with a lot of natural resources. But on the flip side, what comes with this is also an extremely fragile ecosystem, where we are so sensitive to the climate change and through any shifts that we as human beings are causing. So everything from destruction of forests to the depletion of the water table, and more recently very erratic climate cycles. These are all sort of things which we experience here, and it has caused massive amount of next slide, massive amount of migration, because people are losing their agricultural lands, and also they are not able to depend on agriculture, which was the primary occupation earlier. So I think Uttarakhand alone has around 1,700 ghost villages. The image on the right is one of such ghost villages, which are completely abandoned due to this massive migration that's happening. Next slide. If we come to craft, we see, because of this, as a result of migration, we've seen a lot of influx of machine-made goods, which are comparatively low priced, into the local markets. Or if you see the image on the center, it's a hand knitter on the streets of Nainital. I think there's a lot of remnants of handcrafts that you can see all across, but the material which they use has degraded. Even if you look at the skill, there's sufficient degradation of the skill that we observe. And if we look at next slide, if we look at the fashion industry as a whole, I think there's a huge problem here. 1.2 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions are from India's textile industry alone. Uh, I think if that's not what causes alarm, what else would? But the good news is that around 83% of Indians are willing to invest in sustainably produced garments and clothing in general. And a lot of these people are also willing to pay more for it. And mind you, this is data pre-pandemic. So I think trends suggest that after the pandemic, it's only going to increase. So there's sufficient scope for an organization which demonstrates alternative methods of production. Next slide. And that's where we come in as Pioli. I think we all need to collectively, as consumers, as producers, as makers, as designers, to develop a strong conscience as to what we are doing and why we are doing, and what's the impact of what we are going to be doing. So next slide. At Pioli, we use indigenous skills, indigenous knowledge, local materials, and produce handcrafted textiles to create livelihood for women artisans in particular. Next slide. I think all of what we do emerges from a philosophy of and deep love and respect for nature. I think whatever we produce is derived from the traditional indigenous knowledge base that exists, and we try to add as much value to it as possible. Next slide. Um, I think with this core philosophy that's at the center of our organization, um, we tend to carry forward this philosophy into the various dimensions that we work with, be it the people we work with, or the materials and the energy sources that we use in our production practices, or even the design, particularly the product design, the type of products we design, the how the design of the product adequately celebrates the hand processes that go into it, the various materials that go into it, even decisions like the quantity of garments that we make, the time required to produce one garment, the seasonal cycles. Everything is informed by our core philosophy, and even the way in which we approach our market, which market to approach, what is the story we communicate, and how we communicate it, how we communicate our brand philosophy, our branding, our, in a way we are educating each and every person we sell to. So how do we go about it? So I think I'm going to touch upon each of these aspects more deeply as we go through. So next slide. Starting from the raw material, uh, we have a lot of indigenous fibers existing in the region alone. Like for example, if we look at wool, there's a indigenous pastoral tradition which exists in the mountains, and in Uttarakhand too. There are these Bhotia and Jad communities which take to sheep rearing and carry, and they are involved in trading of wool and associated crafts, and this has been steeply declining over time due to various factors. And I think although there's a lot of wool that exists in the region, but there is not much wool that you see in products and in use. So there's a gap in between, which we are trying to fill through sourcing this wool and trying to process it in ways. I mean, it's difficult to use this wool because it's a short staple fiber, so it's coarser and it's a bit unfriendly to. I mean, it's different in terms of its texture, so it's difficult to make it wearable. So that's where the challenge lies, and that's where we are trying to incorporate certain types of processing at various levels, so that we can innovatively use this kind of wool into our products. Next slide. Other indigenous fibers like nettle and hemp, which are bast fibers, which are basically fibers extracted from plants. As you can see on the image in the top left, we can see Himalayan nettle, which is seen quite commonly as a wild undergrowth in all of the Himalayan high altitude belt. We use these fibers to make various kinds of different products because of the unique quality that both nettle and hemp have. They are a bit stiff and coarse. So we use them as detail in our garments. We also have a special accessory range that we do, where we do bags out of hemp and nettle. Next slide. So basically, all the fibers that we use in our work are of natural origin, be it even the cotton that we source is organic cotton, or the old world indigenous Kala cotton. We use merino wool, Angora wool, Harsil, which is the indigenous wool I just spoke about. Next slide. These fibers are processed they before hand spinning at the raw stage. They require certain kind of processing, and even during the spinning and post spinning stages, all these processing methods are done mostly using hands. Next slide. And then comes dyeing. So we do most of our dyeing is using natural dye stuffs. We use walnut. We use a lot of other local materials. I'll show you a few pictures. So in this picture on the left, you can see walnut dyeing in process. So there's raw walnut hulls, and which are being dried, pounded, color extracted, and then the yarn is dyed using the material. We also do fabric dyeing. So on the right, you can see indigo dyeing on fabric, on cotton actually. Next slide. Now dyeing is the process where we sort of depend on and take from nature as much as we can. So we are the most conscious during this process. Everything, all the natural elements from water to sun to the air is utilized during the dyeing process. Next slide. Like for example, here you can see on the left, you can see walnut hulls which are freshly collected and dried, and are being dried on the right hand side. So we all these processing is an extremely time consuming. So when you say you need to depend on natural sources, you also need to allow for that much time for it to for the entire process to happen. It just extends the entire process a bit more, and sometimes a lot more. Next slide. uh, like on the left side, you can see rhododendron, which is a very commonly found flower in the region. So the petals of rhododendron are dried, and then there are a range of pale pinks or to beiges to browns extracted from rhododendron. On the right, you can see the seed coverings of kamla, which is another tree that's found in the region, to extract yellow, various shades of yellow from it. Next slide. Um, and during all of this process of washing, drying, mordanting, dyeing, and post dyeing washing again requires so much water. I mean, comparatively speaking, natural dyes are a better alternative to any other form of dyeing, but I would still say that natural dyeing also uses so much water. There's repeated washing that has to happen for the process, and that involves a lot of water. And I think mountainous regions receive so much rain, but the catchment of water is absent due to the soil conditions, and due to the overall topography, water doesn't stay in the mountains. So we are perpetually at a scarcity of water, and therefore we are very mindful at how much water we use and for what we use and so on. We try to harvest all the rainwater and utilize only harvested water for our entire processing. In fact, this year we've managed to utilize all of the water that has been used in our dyeing has been 100% harvested. Next slide. I think after harvesting this water, there's a lot of heating that's required, and we depend on solar water heating for our dyeing. As with drying of yarn and fabric and final products, we depend a lot on sunlight, which is again a bit erratic in the mountains, because we have regular rainfall and cold and so on. So all of this takes a lot of back and forth with the clients that we do, where it requires a lot of understanding on both parts, to allow for this uncertainty. Next slide. When I spoke about reusing water, this is how we reuse and reuse our mordants and dye baths also. So on the top right, you can see an image where the same madder dye bath has been used repeatedly to dye various colors. So I mean, when the dye bath is gradually exhausting, it gives off a different color. So there's we don't waste a single drop of dye from the bath, so that gives rise to a lot more shades. In fact, next slide. It has so many subtle variations that we have a huge amount of like a library of colors that we have to refer from. Next slide. But this also means that there needs to be a lot of careful documentation and archiving of the entire recipe so that we can refer back to it and modify it when required. Next slide. Then we shortlist colors from there, and that's how our final palette is derived at. And who says that natural dyes are limiting? We have a wide range of colors that we can produce even after all this thought process and filtering that happens. Next slide. Another aspect that is often ignored is the human energy, right? While we do our entire production process, we are heavily dependent on the bountiful human energy to replace the machinery or any other dependence on non-renewable forms of energy. And be it from processing of dye stuffs to the final garment, everything, all the processing is done by a woman's hands. And that's the beauty of it. You can see that even in our hand knitting, we allow for a lot of human engagement. It's a powerful tool to develop a positive community environment. Women can work from home, so it's decentralized. So a woman earns while she looks after her family. And we also sort of borrow from the locally available vocabulary and build on it with various materials and dyes and techniques and so on. Next slide. Another important aspect that we work on is repurposing and upcycling of material. So I just heard today, I heard somebody say today that in nature doesn't know what waste is, So similarly, nothing is wasted at our organization. So even the tiniest bit of indigo yarn, as you can see here, is knitted into small patches and assembled to these one-of-a-kind garments. Next slide. Even cotton fabric strips are crocheted into bags using hemp. Next slide. We keep holding on to even the smallest scrap of indigo fabric or any other natural dyed fabric, and we produce these scarves with these fabric wastes. Next slide. We also do woolen jackets using fabric waste, similarly hand stitched and hand sewn. Next slide. Our packaging, our peoli flowers on each garment are also from waste yarn, and the baskets that we use to package our yarn are water hyacinth baskets from Manipur. Next slide. So all in all, like, our garments are a culmination of various set of processes, each one on its own, quite well thought out in terms of how sustainable it is. And right from the sourcing of the material to the final assembly of the garment, every single process counts. Next slide. So this is the story which we want to communicate through all our garments. These are a couple of examples of our garments. Next slide. We also do cotton knits to make the craft a bit more sustainable season wise, because wool gets restricting in terms of seasons. Next slide. We also, through our work, we finally aim to bring about this change of a woman who is the backbone of the hill economy, who is the sole earner of her family, often with little or negligible education. Working with us gives her a steady source of income, and she transforms into this happy, empowered person who has a marked improvement in her social status. All of this in the background of revival of natural fibers and a various variety of crafts associated with them. So next slide. So this demonstration of our entire journey, when it reaches customers all across the world, it's sort of like a tiny victory when you can communicate this story and transform the thinking of each person that a Pioli product touches. Next slide. um, I think profitable commerce often comes at the cost of the death of the river and the forest. So we are extremely mindful of this, that whatever we stand for is due to the river and the knowledge of the forest. Next slide. I think our model is not very unique. A lot of NGOs and SHGs already do this, but we need many more to create a ripple effect to bring about the change we all seek. Next slide. So I would end with this. We seek a balance guided by design thinking, a balance of aesthetics and practicality, of craft and contemporary fashion, of commerce and a light carbon footprint, of consuming and giving back to the earth in this process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vasanti. This was beautifully explained. And moving from Pioli that has covered the many tangibles and intangibles, including decentralized craft models, local economy, value chains, use of environmental friendly raw materials, and various means of renewable energies. We head on to our next speaker, who is Ms. Alka Sharma, founder of Avaran. I'll go on introducing a bit about her. Alka has grown up in a traditional family in Alwar, Rajasthan, and has spent many afternoons watching her grandmother making daris. There was not much for the ladies to do at home after lunch, she says, and eventually fell in love with the whole process. Keen on restoring and sustaining the indigenous craft of dabu, which is a form of hand block printing from Rajasthan, she began work of reviving the indigo dyeing practice of Akola near Udaipur. Through Avran, she has managed to employ more than 100 people in the design and production departments and has empowered more than 200 women across 4 independently run training centers in the villages of Debari, Matun, Kanpur, and Zawar in Rajasthan. Avran undertakes a zero waste model, and now I would just request Alka to come in and share her experience with us. Over to you, Alka. Alka, you are on mute. Please unmute yourself.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, we can. We can maybe start with the presentation. Yeah.
Yeah. So hello everyone. So basically, Avran, we are based in Udaipur, Rajasthan. Uh, Shishti, you can just keep on changing the slides. And thank you, Vasanti. It
Yeah,
was
Alka.
such a beautiful insight. Uh, so Avran is based in Udaipur, Rajasthan, and we have everything vertically integrated, like everything is done in-house, right from uh, like designing to dyeing to printing to stitching. So everything is inside one under one roof. So in this we can control like uh, the amount of, we are a zero waste company and we can like control everything in our premises. So so that for that I am really grateful, and like in my own small world I can have no waste at all. So we work with traditional craft, indigenous block printing community. So we started with indigo, which was a staple of Mewar region, and then we ventured into other natural dyes. So what we do is we take all the natural dyes which are locally available, like kashish, patang ki lakdi, Brazilian wood that is called, and like manjishta, haldi. So we work with various other natural dyes. Next slide, please. So this is our team, like this is the structure. So, mm, so these people are working with us since a long time. Like it's been more than 10 years. So it's a family to us. Next slide. So this is like we source raw material from across India, and it's mostly handloom, and it's also power loom. So it's a mix of both, but it's mostly handloom. So you can see the process. We use uh, mud, which is like available near lakeside, and it's completely pure and natural. We mix uh, babool ka glue, babool gond, which is called, and we mix chuna, lime, and then it acts as a resistant. So our USP is we use very fine mud resist printing. We do very fine, and the design development is we do very research based design development. So taking the traditional craft, practicing in the traditional way, but we take designs and all in a contemporary form, so that the new generations, the future generations can also look up to, they want to wear it. So we have to sustain this craft. It's a like beautiful textile craft India holds. So we have to take this forward. So next slide. So it's a like I love the space I have. It's a very happy environment where we have interns, designers from various organizations like NID, NIFT, IICD. So they work with the craftsmen, and then we have uh, like centers near Udaipur, where we have like a group of 30 women. So like one is stitching center, one is dari making center, one is like button and accessories making center. So we give them very intensive training. It's been years. So now I would call it a production unit. Earlier they were like training units, and they so every unit is specialized in their own way, like uh, gari making, then gudri making, like which so it's because today's day is of specialized era, so that the finishing and all is it's at its best. So it's like that. So and we have currently we have 3 stores. We have recently shut down Jaipur store because of COVID, but we plan to have another. Right now we are in Udaipur, Bangalore, Chandigarh. So it's like that. Next slide, please. So you can see the unit, I mean the training centers, the production centers. It's in Sindeshwar Kala, Kanpur, Zawar, Mattoon, Debari. So we, earlier we had 300 people before COVID, but now slowly we are calling people as when the market is improving. So this is a very critical time, but I hope things will be better and we are on our way back. Next slide. So this is the our workshop, and so slowly we are building on it as and when the funds come. So we build some part or the other in a very mindful way. So we have made water like tanks, which so that minimum wastage of water is done, but there is nothing chemical, like very you can say 5%. Uh, but soon we will have a water transplant technique. Currently we don't have, but nothing goes waste. We use the material, we use the water for our gardening, and we have few plants in the premises. Next slide, please. So you can see this is a USP, fine mud resist printing and fun prints. Then we are a zero waste company, and we do a very good research, like not like um, I take help from many people, and then because it's a teamwork, ours is a social enterprise, community-based enterprise. So I take help from many experts because like it's like you have to go a long way, then you should have a very good team. Next slide. So these are the centers, various centers. Next slide, please. This is a dari making center. This is like we do embroidery. So this is the product range. So we have women's wear, men's wear, daris, accessories, homeware. Men's wear is it's a very recent venture, men's wear. Next slide. Yeah. So you can see like this is a zero waste model. So we have like actually we separate all the chindis like silk in one, chanderi in one, cotton in one, and then accordingly we make all the products like potlis or daris or things like that. Next slide. So this is, we have competition amongst all the centers, and whoever performs well, so we give them prize. Like every year we have this like review, whoever has done, whatever they've done well, we share with them. And then, so it is to create a healthy competition amongst all the members of the community, among so all the women and all, it's a very healthy competition. Next slide. So this is just a media coverage, and so yeah, you can read these. Yeah. Next slide. Thank you, Craftmark and Shrishti. And I had done my first internship with Vikram sir, so I wanted to say hi to him.
I think he'll be very happy to see most of his interns today because Vasanti also in the morning told me that she and her partner Bhinav had done her internship under him in 2009. So
Oh, I had
yeah,
done in, I don't know, 1990, I don't know, I don't even remember. 1999, I think so.
yeah,
So can I say hi to him? Like, can we see him?
he's right here and he's our next speaker. So I'll go
Yeah.
on and introducing.
Hello, Vikram sir.
Hi, Helga. How are you?
Sir, you remember me? I don't think so.
Good
You.
to. I do remember you, Alka, and I've been hearing all the good things about you. I'm so proud of you.
Oh. Sir, you were my first like one-to-one as a mentor, and I've learned a lot from you, sir. And I love what you do.
Thank, thank you so much.
This
Thank you
is
so much.
this is great. Maybe we'll just move ahead with the session. And thank you, Alka.
Sorry, sorry,
Thank
sorry.
you. No problem, Alka. Thank you so much. And thank you for the presentation. It was really nice. We'll go ahead with our next speaker. And to just set a larger context, we know that the textile industry is one of the most pollutant releasing industries of the world. Surveys also show that nearly 5% of all landfill space is consumed by textile waste. Beside 20% of all freshwater pollution is made by textile treatment and dyeing. And also, one of the articles by fiber2fashion.com says that according to a study that was conducted to test the amount of metals present in soil and groundwater located near to the textile and tannery industries in Haridwar, India, all the metals like chromium, iron, manganese, copper, lead, cadmium were present in large amounts than what is prescribed as safe by WHO. So, and they can also cause harm in the living beings. So, more recently in India, with changing laws and regulations, many production units across multiple craft productions, for example, the block printing cluster of Sanganer, which do not adhere to the established environmental regulations of Central Pollution Control Board, have also been shut. In continuation to this, I would now request Mr. Vikram Joshi, who is also founder of Rangotri, to share a more technical perspective on various green technologies around water treatment and recycling, which is in the core of many textile-based processes and precisely through a lens of smaller businesses. Mr. Vikram Joshi is a trained textile technologist, and he started his career in 1985 with the Handicraft Board and Government of India to document the traditional hand block printing craft, particularly in Rajasthan and around. He has actively contributed his time to get the geographical indication for Sanganeri print and also as a promoter and managing director of a textile park near Bagru called Jaipur Block. This park is a role model in craft industry as there are various measures taken to recycle water, collect rainwater, and use solar energy. This park has been appreciated and acknowledged by the European Union and Stockholm International Water Institute, Sweden, and Swedish Industrial Development Agency. This textile park has also been awarded as the most responsible Indian business membership organization by Ministry of Micro and Medium Small Enterprises and also as an outstanding performance for setting up eco-friendly textile park for traditional industry by Ministry of Textiles, Government of India. Mr. Joshi's brand or company, Rangotri, nestled in Sanganer, which was started in 1995, promotes and preserves the textile heritage. And I would just request Vikramji to come in and share his insights with us. Over to you, Vikramji.
Well, thank you so much, Rishi, and a warm hi to all of you. You're all sitting in the very cold weather. I'm sitting in Goa at the moment, so I'm trying to make use of the sunlight as much as possible because I'm sitting outside in the veranda. Audible.
Yes, sir, you are
So,
audible.
well, okay, great. So, well, taking you through this whole journey of Jaipur Block and how it all started in 2003, when the civil authorities, the municipal authorities, and the judiciary asked the Sanganer cluster to close down in 2003, it was a big setback to the entire industry because there were about 450 block printing units and there were about close to about 550 screen printing units. And this was creating a big load of affluent on the Nala, which passes through the Jaipur city and goes right up to the southern part of Jaipur. And the block printers, as I said, I represented the block printing community, and they were kind of very worried and also very upset about the fact that they are going to be losing their livelihood. So they all came to me, and we formed a group where we started talking to the government officials, and we started talking to the politicians. We started talking to the local authorities, and everyone said, "Well, we are uh, uh, sympathetic about the whole situation. But on the environmental issues, we cannot let you continue the way you're doing it. And fair enough. I mean, we were not only using the water, we are actually abusing the water. So it was very challenging for me to convince the government department officials, especially judiciary, because we didn't role model or any model to show them that how this whole uh, situation can be improved. So in 2004, I started working on this concept called Jaipur Block, where I invited about 20 exporters, textile exporters of Jaipur, who were largely into block printing, and we formed a company called Jaipur Integrated Textile Park Private Limited, and we approached the state government asking them to provide us some space, and also we approached the central government to help us set up this park. And in 2006, our application was well received and very encouraging from the central government. And in 2009, it took us about almost like 3 years to get all possible permission to set up this park in an area called Bagru, which is not too far from Jaipur. And this particular area was in dark zone. That means we were not allowed to draw water from the ground. So it made us more, challenging that to manage this whole um, uh, situation. So in 2009, when we got all possible permissions from groundwater board, we got the permission from Ministry of Forest and Environment, and the uh, state government to set up the textile park. It took us close to about 4 years to build up this park, and as you can see, the from my first slide, it's our industry is the most abused in terms of using the water. And fair enough, it's actually we're using about you can say 160 crore liters of water slowly across the India, but taking Jaipur or around Jaipur, we were using close to about maybe like 160 liters, and largely the groundwater. Can we have a next slide, please? So this was a bit challenging because we were setting up this park in a dark zone. We were not allowed to draw water. So my first focus was to use how uh, process. So we first focus was to how to collect the rainwater, and the second how to recycle the water. And for that, we were uh, uh, fortunate enough to find a suitable company from Chennai who set up a treatment plant for the textile park, which was producing 5 million liters of water per day. Next slide, please. As you can see, a lot of challenges and opportunities for working with renewable water resources management. And next slide, please. So the whole idea was that we need to set up a textile park in Jaipur, the uh, so we were set up that, but we
Vikramji, sorry to interrupt. Can you hear me? There's some voice lag
yeah.
from your end. Can we try relocating the device or something?
Well, my internet device says it's a full internet on.
Yeah, I think now it's
Uh,
better. So is it because you are closer to
okay.
the laptop, maybe?
Okay, but my audio
Yeah, it's
quality is
better
good?
now. It's better now.
All
Yeah,
right.
please go on.
Okay. Okay, so taking you back for in terms of number of members, it was just 20 of us, and this 20 members uh, got together and we started building up this partnership. Next slide, please. Next one. So when we were setting up this textile park, our main idea was to uh, make it as a kind of a place where the traditional crafts, especially the hand block printing and the modern technology of screen printing or even the rotary printing can be seen together as because when you're talking about industry as such, we can't isolate one segment, which is just the craft hand block. We also have to look into the other part of the in the industry. So we were, as I said, we were fortunate enough that Government of India, under a scheme called Special Integrated Textile Parks Scheme, we were awarded this some sort of a grant to set up this uh, some uh, some to set up this this textile park. Next slide, please. So the main features of this textile park is we have a secretariat, we have a training center, and a resource center. We also have a common facility, which is common processing, central effluent treatment plant, which, as I said, treats close to about 5 lakh liters per day, and 90% of this water is sent back to the industry. And apart from that, we also have a central RO, reverse osmosis drinking plant, to supply to all the units for drinking. And each unit is being um, connected with the central effluent treatment plant with a very high-tech flow meters. So we monitor the load which is coming in, and we also make sure that the units are monitored, that amount of load which they are supposed to release plant is either not going down or not going up to upset our treatment plant. And we also have sewage treatment plants, so entire the toilets and the working spaces where workers are using the toilets. That water is also, we are recycling it, and we're using it to this water to for our gardening. Next one, please. Next slide, please. Well, we have, as you can see, 19 members, because one of the members is not yet operational. So we are 19 members operational. We have enough green belt, and we also have a central water collection pond, which collects the rainwater, uh, about 1 lakh, 1 crore, 70 lakh liters of water in in uh, in in monsoon time. So, taking you back to the water collection system, we have in individual units the 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 water which is rainwater, which gets collected from the rooftop, gets first collected in the individual units. The individual units water overflow comes to the central uh, pond, and also all the open area in the park, which is the roads and the common areas. All the water is trained in such a manner that the entire water, which is we get it from the rainwater, gets collected to the central pond. And then we have two ground recharge points. The entire park is with a cemented road and the duration in such a way that the entire water which falls, the rainwater falls, it goes, it's drained towards the central pond. We have a solar backup to run our treatment plant. So earlier we had about 50 kilowatts solar plant. Now we have 350 kilowatt solar panels to run our treatment plant. And as I said, rooftop rainwater harvesting. Then we have a small canteen facility for the workers. Solar energy, as I was telling, the stormwater drainage. The the entire park is guarded with security guards. We are proposing for a textile lab, design development, and resource center to archive all our resources. Next one, please. This is a picture of the central rainwater collection tank, which collects, as you can see, and this is it's lined with the plastic lining. So we dug up this whole space to create this rainwater collection tank. And on top of the corner, you can see some solar panels which generate electricity to run our treatment plant. Next one, please. Yeah, some of the solar panels pictures. And we are fortunate that, this is our treatment plant. As I was saying, this is a state-of-the-art treatment plant, treating close to about 5 lakh liters of water, which is probably one of the biggest in Jaipur district, treating 5 lakh liters per day. Next one, please. This is some of the pictures of the. We pump up all the water in the water tank. We have a freshwater treatment plant and a flint treatment plant to recover the water, and it's actually ZLD, zero liquid discharge. That means we are not supposed to uh, throw any amount of water on the ground. So everything we recycle completely, and of course, sewage treatment plant, pumping stations, and automated conveyance and management system. Next one, please. This is the drinking water plant we have for the entire workers, and we have close to about 550 printers, artisans working in this textile park. So everybody gets a clean water for drinking. Next one, please. Sewage treatment plant I've already spoken to you about that this plant, and we use this water for greening the park. And just to add, when we were given this land, it was completely sand dunes. There was nothing there. It was completely a barren land. And we managed to plant close to about 1,700 plants in this textile park. And all those plants are well taken care of by this sewage treated water. Next one, please.
Vikamji, sorry to interrupt again. Since we are a
Yeah.
little tight on time, can I request you to please talk a bit about the BETP, because I would not want the audience to not hear about it, because that's also
Okay.
a very important part of the presentation. So
Okay.
maybe
Great. So can we have the next one, please? This is no, next one, please. Next one, please. This is the water management. So I'll be talking about the biological treatment plant now. Uh, well, this is that park has advantage of because of the space and because of the number, but I also started working on the biological treatment plants. And am I audible, Shrishti?
Yes, Vikramji, you are. Please
Am I
go on.
audible?
Yes, you
Okay,
are.
great.
Please
All
go
right.
on.
So okay. So biological treatment plants are basically a small treatment plants. You can keep on sliding, change the slides, please. Let me come up to the last one. No, next one, next one. I think we have the last four slides for the uh, next one, please. Yeah, okay. So now let me
Yeah, this one.
talk. Yeah, biological treatment plant is basically a small little plant which works with a very minimum amount of energy, electric energy, and also uh, because once you set up this treatment plant, you don't need to look after it for for years. One treatment plant which I had set up in Kimsar was in 2010, and till date it is working efficiently. The whole idea is to take the contaminated water uh, from the source, wherever the source is, and then pump it to a level of which is almost like 10 feet above the ground. And slowly this water gets dripped through different beds. As you can see, there are three, four layers of in each bed, and these beds are covered with plants and a particular plant, canna, which along with a media, which is a biological product, it basically treats the water. It breaks the molecular structure of the dye in such a manner that you get the treated water through through the gravity. And of course it's not portable, but you can reuse it for dyeing, you can reuse it for mixing color, you can reuse it for washing fabric, or anything. And it's a very successful method. And the company which was helping me to set up these kind of treatment plants is based out of Pune. I can share the details with Shrishti and Aika if they for everyone to know. And it's not very expensive, as I said. It cost close to about 4.5 lakh rupees, and mostly the money goes in the structural, the masonry work, and you need only one pump, very basic pump to pump out the water, and and electricity. And even if you have a solar uh, pump, that can also be can be incorporated in this thing. So this biological effluent treatment plant is absolutely kind of answer to people like Alka, who is working in say village in Udaipur, or uh, Vasanthi, who's working in place where the water is very less. And this treatment plant, I have used it in Jaipur also, and I'm also now setting up the similar treatment plant in the golf club, because we have enough green area and we have a water there. So this application of this biological effluent treatment plant can be varied. It can be for the treating the sewage water. It can be used for treating the drainage, municipal drainage water. It can be used for textile effluent water. So I guess this is all from me, and I'm so thankful to Aika and Shrishti and the team who had given me opportunity to share my experience and uh, whatever I've been doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vikramji. We are grateful that you could give us time and give those insights, which are very valuable for sure. And moving ahead, I will maybe request Avnish to come in and start his presentation. But before that, I'll just talk a bit. Since today these traditional green attributes are being compromised due to various factors such as forced dependencies on external markets for raw materials, dyestuffs, processing chemicals, as well as changing markets in a fast-paced economy. At one level, the increasing presence of crafts in the mainstream markets is opening up new opportunities for rural craftspeople, yet the scale and growth demanded by the market have, is opening up the new opportunities, yet the scale and growth of the demanding market are not being matched up by corresponding capacities. In fact, unplanned growth simply in response to the market demand is leading to widespread use of environmentally harmful processes and raw materials. Within the market environment, compliance to international standards is emerging as a key determinant of competitiveness for handicrafts and handloom sector. Hence, in the lines of these issues, ICA has been closely working to benchmark certain standards and green capacity building adherence in the sector under its green program. So next, moving ahead, I am requesting Avnish, who's the textile specialist at ICA, to share some of these insights with us and also the framework for textiles that we had been working on, developing it across the stages of pre-production, production, and post-production, everything that we have discussed until now. So over to you, Avnish, all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Srishti. First of all, I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their inspirational stories. जैसा कि आपने शुरू ही किया कि it's about unpacking many layers of sustainability, and I believe कि these three presentations gave us a lot of insight about how everybody is trying to become sustainable in their own ways. Where it was Vasanti working with all the organic material, natural dyes, doing it locally, or it was Alka working with in Avaran with all the women, approximately 200 women working in that one said, and I have been to her place, and when she says that that place looks happy, when she said that it's a happy environment, and I was able to feel that. Having a zero waste standard over there, it's really wonderful to know that you can actually utilize all your waste, and then from stitching you are taking your waste and making daris out of it. It was a very I think it will inspire all other people who are actually listening to this to try to take it in their own in their own practice. किसी भी तरीके से वो अपने प्रैक्टिस में कैसे इन चीज़ों को इन्वॉल्व कर सकते हैं, चाहे वो रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग हो या जीरो वेस्ट मैकेनिज्म हो. साथ में विक्रम सर ने जैसा प्रेजेंट किया, it's such a wonderful story, and also to know that when government rule, government has their own set of rules, and they will obviously come to us and tell us that you can't practice this such kind of activities in a close proximity to a residential place. We'll have to follow it, whether we are working on handicraft or handloom. There are some set rules which we'll have to follow, and how a team of 20 exporters and producers came together and developed something like the state-of-art Jaipur block. I have been to his place, and I think is the only textile park which is functional in India, and with such a great ease, all the people are working together. It has a we call craft sector as unorganized sector, but if you have to see how organized the craft sector could be, I would request everybody to go and see Jaipur block, because all the people, whether it's Anokhi, it's Rangotri, it's Ojas or RK Derawala, all these people, they are all working with hand, they are all working with artisans, the sector which we call as unorganized, but it's the same set of people, the same practice is done with such an organized manner. all the water is being treated, everybody is given ample amount of light, source of light, working condition, everything is wonderful and something to learn from. I would first obviously thank all three of you for sharing this. And uh, so basically, this is something I would say that आइका भी अपने पिछले लगभग 15-16 सालों के कार्यकाल में क्राफ्ट के साथ कई तरह के कई स्टेजेस पे इन्वॉल्व रहा है. We have been doing workshops with the artisan, we are implementing projects with funders, we are working on policy, we are advocating for the artisan, and at the same time we have a certification which is called Craftmark certification. I would actually request Karuna if you can please put my presentation. I'm not able to see it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
before Avnish goes ahead, I'll just request the audience and attendees to also put in any questions in the question answer section. Yeah, we can go on, Avnish.
Yeah. So basically, in last more than 15 years of our working with artisan, we at different level. One of our flagship program is certifying all craft processes, which we call as Craftmark. I hope, as we all know, we all are aware of the mark, and Pioli is one of our member. So in Craftmark, if you can go to next slide, please, Karuna. So Craftmark, as in a certification, assures that the product is made in India. It's not used child labor. It's all handmade. There are fair labor and decent working conditions are provided. So we ensure that there is a social and economical sustainability to the craft and the practitioner. But with the increasing demand and obviously, जैसा कि विक्रम सर ने भी कहा कि गवर्नमेंट रूल्स के आने के कारण या फिर एक ग्लोबल वार्मिंग को लेकर के एक जो अवेयरनेस है even in the producer and the user obviously, and then there are different rules for export and import which also makes a binding frame for us to follow that. कई सारे रिक्वेस्ट एक ऐसी स्टेज थी कि we had to think of how Craftmark in its all endeavor can support the craft members. We have 150 plus members and more than 50,000 artisans member with us. तो उन सबको हम कैसे सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं इस नए चीज से, जो कि अब एक रिक्वेस्ट ही नहीं, अब नेसेसिटी की तरह आती जा रही है. This was the stage when we started thinking about environmental sustainability as a part of our another leg of our intervention. Next slide, please. सो क्राफ्टमार्क ग्रीन, जो कि क्राफ्टमार्क के सोशल सस्टेनेबिलिटी और इकोनॉमिक सस्टेनेबिलिटी के साथ एनवायरमेंटल सस्टेनेबिलिटी को भी इंक्लूड करता है, which talks about fair or recycled use of energy, use of water, नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज, जो कि अभी हम पहले के प्रेजेंटेशंस में भी देखते आए हैं, जैसा कि पियोली के केस में हमने सुना कि कैसे वो रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग को मैक्सिमम यूटिलाइज करना चाहते हैं. यूज ऑफ हजार्डस केमिकल, बहुत सारे लोग अभी नेचुरल डाई और ऑर्गेनिक मटेरियल की तरफ शिफ्ट हो रहे हैं. सो हाउ वी आर एक्चुअली not only educating our artisan but also helping them to coming to a stage where they can understand what chemicals are hazardous and how to avoid them and use safe materials. How the waste management is being done, like in case of Avaran, it's a zero waste setup, so nothing like it. So how one can manage its waste, the way Alka is using whatever the stitching waste is there with her, all the katran, and making daris out of it, is a very good example for all the enterprises who are working on stitching garments and such activities. Uses of raw material and how raw material is being even sourced, what raw material you are using, and what the raw material itself can have some harmful attributes to it, to how to identify or reduce it. And at the end, how and what should be your packaging material so you are not polluting the environment, because a lot of time packaging is something which become immediate waste like the moment a customer buys a product, वो पैकेजिंग से अपना सामान निकालता है, and that packaging material become immediate waste for that process. So what we are using as a packaging, how we can reduce even that. Next slide, please. So Craftmark Green, I think this was the time when we also started thinking more about how and what we should do, how we can frame our sustainability measures, our standards. This all started by doing a lot of research. We first obviously started like on different parameters. We started researching about different textile crafts. We started learning from the market, how the market is responding, what exactly the market is looking for, how the whole growth of sustainability, how people are responding to it. And at the same time, also to look at different eco certification like Ecotex. There are ISOs on which the government is basing its export or import policies. There are CPCP norms, there are BIS norms. So we started researching about all of these at the same time, and also trying to come to a point जहां हम इन सब का एक intersection decide कर सकें, but at the same time not leaving out on the very first thing, which our primary objective is, that is to sustain the craft. So craft in itself, we all agree that craft is majorly green because it's most of the work is being done by hand. It's the human power which is being used, but still there are water, energy, chemicals which are being used. So we also wanted that to be sure that, you know, when a craft person is making something, he's also safe from all the norms which are there in place. While he's making some product, he should be confident enough that he can actually sell it or export it wherever he wants. So with this all thought process and all the research, we basically started we started with some consultation with designers, consultation with industry experts like Vikram sir, who has been our expert for more than a couple of years, I would say, and I have worked with him for more than a year on these things. We worked with IIT, NITRA, NIFT, testing agencies like Bureau Veritas, and then we kind of started framing our own set of questions, own set of standards, which can ensure that a product made out of a craft process is green, and at the same time वो जितने भी अलग अलग नॉर्म्स हैं, चाहे वो CPCB के प्रोडक्शन रिलेटेड नॉर्म्स हो या किसी भी एक्सपोर्ट के लिए EPCH के नॉर्म्स हो, इन सबको सेटिस्फाई करते हुए और इस तरह का प्रोडक्ट बना सके कि वो किसी यूजर, कंज्यूमर या एनवायरनमेंट को कहीं से भी हार्म ना करता हो। इस ख्याल को रखते हुए हमने टेक्सटाइल के पूरे प्रोसेस को समझा और उसके standards define kiye. And then we disaggregated these standards into 3 categories. Can you go to the next slide, please, Karuna? Yeah. So there are few things which are non-negotiable. Even in our case of Craftmark, when we say that no child labor will be accepted or fair wages pay किए जाने चाहिए, उसी तरह से Craftmark Green में भी there are few criteria which is minimum or non-negotiable. One should not use harmful chemical, banned amines, any dyes which are harmful, or any chemical or heavy metal is not being used as above acceptable range. So those comes under minimum criteria, but at the same time, there are few desirable criteria like if you are reusing your water, you are reducing the consumption of energy. So those are like a very good desirable criteria that obviously अगर आप minimum criteria को qualify करते हैं तो आप obviously certificate के लिए आप ये certificate ले सकते हैं, but साथ ही साथ आइका का जो अपना mandate भी है कि we also want our enterprises and members to grow with us. So even if you are qualified for Craftmark Green, we will also work with you and try to upgrade your systems and take you to a desirable criteria and maybe even to a best practice stage. सो जैसे आज के हमारे तीनों प्रेजेंटेशन अगर मैं कहूँ तो इन तीनों में कुछ चीज़ें ऐसी हैं जो बिल्कुल बेस्ट प्रैक्टिस के स्टेज पे है, चाहे वो लोकल इकोनॉमी में काम करना हो, चाहे ऑर्गेनिक मटीरियल हो, रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग हो, या ईटीपी के द्वारा पानी को रीयूज रिसाइकल करना हो। सो दीज आर सम क्राइटेरिया जिनके बेसिस पे हमने जिसके अंतर्गत हमने अपने फ्रेमवर्क के अंतर्गत हमने अपने फॉर्म डेवलप किए हैं। इस पूरे प्रोसेस में हमने ऑलरेडी कोई 2.5-3 साल का समय लगाया है। नाउ वी आर एट अ स्टेज व्हेन वी कैन से दैट वी आर रेडी टू लॉन्च आवर क्राफ्टमा ग्रीन सर्टिफिकेशन फॉर टेक्सटाइल. We are almost at the very last stage of it, and we are developing an app for the application process. And hopefully, I expect that we'll be able to present for the bigger group in by next month. We have already piloted this form with 6-7 different enterprises, and we are quite confident that we have developed a framework which will be fit for the sector. As I was saying, हम अपने members के साथ साथ काम भी करना चाहते हैं, तो इसके लिए हमने लगभग 1 साल पहले से ही 2 ऐसे सेंटर्स हैं जिस पे क्राफ्टमा ग्रीन के फ्रेमवर्क के साथ काम करना स्टार्ट भी कर दिया है। It's kind of pilot for us also to understand that how a craft practice or a artisan group can come together and you can become a green or a ecologically sustainable, environmentally sustainable practice. We have already done this in Javaja. We have installed a rainwater harvesting system and trained them in dyeing processes, and we are still working on a standardization of the processes. In Dokra, in Odisha, we have already working with energy efficiency, and we are developing rat trap kiln. And this is, I would say, where our Craftma Green is at present. And I hope by next month we'll be able to present a complete, we'll be able to take up Craftma Green applications. I think that would be from my side. Srishti, I would request if anyone have any question, please.
Sure. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Avnish. This was briefly everything that we had been doing for past 2 to 3 years under Craftmark Green. And as Avnish also said that since this discussion was all around textile practices, but this is not just about textiles. We are also equally working with other materials and practices around hard materials like metal, clay, and other natural fibers also, under which we have been able to do some pilot interventions in few of our clusters of Dhokra, and we are working towards benchmarking few standards for clay and metal as well. So moving to the question and answers, I have a few questions for our speakers. The first one has come from Tariq Ahmed ji, and it is for Alka. So I would request Alka to also unmute herself, and maybe I can go ahead with the question then. Hello, Alka? Hello? I think Alka is not able to hear me. Maybe then I'll go with the next question, which is come from Shivali, and it's a nice and very general question for everyone in the panel. Please let me know who would want to answer this. So her question is, how do we plan to bring the cost of the natural or sustainable products at par with other commercial products available in the market? Since the cost of these naturally made products is sometimes very high, not all can afford it. Even if they want, they can't. If the cost reduces, then the market demand for such products will automatically increase. What's the take on this? Who would want to come in among all of us? Avnish, Vasanti. I think Vasanti has unmute herself. Yeah.
Okay, can I?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Go
Vasanthi.
ahead, Vikram. Go
Please,
ahead.
we can
Go
go
ahead.
Okay,
with both of you. Yes.
okay. I don't know. The light quality has become very bad now because I'm sitting outside. So, but I hope my audio quality is good enough to answer the question.
It is. It is.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Let's look at the two models, Vasanthi and Alka. they're working with the minimum amount of energy in terms of natural resources. And when you reduce the cost of the product, basically you have to see where Bharti has given a
Vikramji, there is a
very
bit of
good
lag in the
example.
voice.
Okay. Uh,
Yeah, can you
better
please?
now?
Not really, not really.
Okay.
Uh,
Better?
maybe you can switch off your
Is it better?
video.
Yeah, maybe that's better.
Okay.
Try switching on the video. Yeah. Hello. Did we lose him?
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Vikramji, please go on.
Okay, let me stop the video and see if that improves.
Yeah, this is better.
But okay, is it better now?
Yeah, yeah,
Am I
yeah,
audible?
yeah.
Okay, okay. So what Vasanti has shown us as an example, where she is trying to use all possible, I wouldn't call it waste because there's nothing waste. She's trying to use as much as possible in terms of even smallest possible changes in making into a garment. Similarly, what Alka has been doing in trying to use the all possible things, that means uh, we can make multiple products from our own product line. So the 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 fortunate part in India that we have not very expensive manpower. So if you can utilize more manpower in turning your product into more demanding, you you kind of reduce the cost of the product. Also, at the same time, you have to make your customer uh, understand that they have to in turn uh, you know share the story what you are trying to do, because it's important for an end user to understand what they are buying and what they are comparing it with. So I think it's very important that the value chain, which starts from the producer, goes right up to the person who is finally selling across the counter, has the same synergy. Yeah.
Thank you for that reply, Vikramji. I hope the answer got the question got answered, but I think Vasanti also has something to say on
I
this.
have a sort of a slightly different view also, which
Yeah.
taking it forward from where Vikram was just saying how how there needs to be a communication to the consumer. I think the premise that the question suggests that uh, uh, being at par with other commercial products, our reference points of measuring and of comparing our products with what exists, that entire narrative needs a huge shift. It would be gradual, but of course it's required, because everything from our production, our sourcing, everything has its problems, and if we begin to rectify each thing at each level, of course it will cost, and there are costs involved, and things do get expensive for a reason, and they were cheap also for a reason, because we were compromising somewhere. And when a product costs less, when as a customer you're paying less for a product, it doesn't mean that the product is cheap. Someone somewhere is paying for it. The earth is paying for it. The makers at some point of the production cycle is paying for it. So it's just that we are blind to it. We don't look at those costs, and that's why the product is cheap, but the product might end up being very expensive on the earth. So there needs to be there's enough scope for a huge shift in the entire narrative, entire dialogue, entire communication that needs to happen, which would ultimately educate a customer. And for that reason, I feel that, you know, these reference points of having a comparison of with a mass produced goods is in itself a little flawed from where I look at it. And rather, you know, design can play a constructive role in this, where you know, things associated with the product are not looked at as defects, but are celebrated. And there's an ample aspirational value that we can create for such products, which where they can get the price for the entire everything that goes into the making of it. So yeah, that's where I am looking at it from. Of course, we can have multiple views. We need a lot of such layers to be simultaneously existing for this entire movement to succeed in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's rightly said, Vasanti. I mean, that's what we have always been discussing about the conscious consumerism and, the production and everything around it. So that I think Shivali rightly got the answer for her question. The next one comes for Avnish, about, is the green certification feasible and affordable for small craft businesses?
Uh, I would say that at present, uh, पहले तो हमारा एक स्केल भी होना चाहिए कि कितने स्केल का कोई इंसान अगर होगा, कि स्टेज पे होगा, तो वो आना चाहेगा, क्राफ्ट मार्क ग्रीन लेना भी चाहेगा। जैसा मैं खुद कह रहा था कि ग्रीन के सबसे ज़्यादा इम्पॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट्स होंगे जब आप इसको एक्सपोर्ट करना चाह रहे हों, या आप एक ऐसे जगह पे काम कर रहे हैं जहाँ गवर्नमेंट के रूल्स के कारण आप पे कई लिमिटेशन आ रही है। ग्रीन जहाँ तक मेरा अंदाज़ा है, क्राफ्ट मार्क के सर्टिफिकेशन से थोड़ा कॉस्टली हो सकता है। इसमें एक वन टाइम इन्वेस्टमेंट ज़रूर है, बिकॉज देयर विल बी सम टेस्टिंग रिक्वायर्ड फॉर योर मटीरियल and also about the process and how effluent are being treated. But with any organizations like Avaran or Paoli, आई थिंक इस तरह की कोई भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बहुत आसानी से क्राफ्ट मार्क ग्रीन को अफोर्ड भी कर सकते हैं। बहुत मायने ये रखता है कि जब आप एक सर्टिफिकेशन को लेना चाहते हैं, तो क्या आप उसमें क्या यूटिलिटी देखते हैं। और मुझे लगता है कि एक मीडियम टू मीडियम स्केल के ही एंटरप्राइजेस कहीं भी कई जगहों पे जाके बिल्कुल जो आर्टिजन ओन्ड एंटरप्राइजेज हैं, एक या दो वीवर या ऐसे सेटअप हैं, उनके लिए मुश्किल होगा, मगर कोऑपरेटिव या उससे ऊपर के स्टेजेस में आई बिलीव इट्स feasible decision, and it will be beneficial in the long run if they are working with buyers from outside of India. It's like a very good I would say कि एक अच्छा इन्वेस्टमेंट होगा उनके लिए। Yes, सृष्टि।
Thank you, Avnish. Thank you. The next question is for Vikramji. What are the plants that can be used as in the biological effluent treatment plant? Vikramji, the question is for you.
Okay, let me check. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my experiment and my working with Kenna is been very successful. And the second plant is vetiver, which will in Hindi it's called khas. Uh, so these two plants are brilliant for turning the contaminated water into a potable, not potable, into a water which you can use it for uh, re, reuse it for your purpose.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And also there is this grass, हाथी घास जो हम कहते हैं. This is another breed of very similar to vetiver, जो कि heavy metal के लिए काफी बेहतर हो सकता है, heavy metal extraction के लिए अगर effluent में है. So yes, there are a lot of such plants. I think विक्रम सर ने vetiver और केना के साथ तो already काम किया हुआ है. So Yeah.
Because Kenna is what we had been most commonly seeing
Yes.
in the SERI BTPs also, and maybe at Bodhi as well. Uh, I think we are done with the questions, and we have already like shoot on time. It's 6:42, and I am just hopeful, and I hope the session was of use to everyone who has joined, and you found something of worth taking from this. And I'm really grateful from all the team at ICA to everyone who has joined it, and to all the speakers, including Alka, who has, I think, left now. Uh, so I think we are good to conclude this, and hopefully we'll come up with a next webinar soon on our further progress on Kraftma Green.
Well, thank you so much, Shrishti. I think it was a very brilliantly organized, and thank you for your to entire team, and thanks Vasanthi and Avnish for your presentation. It was very inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Vikram. Your presentation was really inspiring. I'm going to get in touch with you for.
Vasanthi already has some questions. So
Thank you.
thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay,
Thank.
bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye.